Mr. King, my brother Prescott and comrade, ambassadors, my Cuban brothers and sisters, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the Israel Lovell Foundation on this occasion as we honor Marcus Messiah Garvey. As I was looking at some documents, I recognized that in 1927 there was a Garvey night in Barbados put on by the Working Men's Association. And in 1930 the UNIA also had a Garvey night. So we are in good company in having this activity today. I wish to thank the organizers for taking the gamble in asking me to speak today. Hopefully, I will not disappoint. I hope to speak on two topics really. So the first is Garvey's visit in 1937 and then his influence on the progressive movement in Barbados. On the 10th of July 1937, an advertisement was seen in the Observer newspaper that stated that the UNIA Westbury branch number 229 had invited Garvey to come to Barbados, and he was expected to come to Barbados on the 18th of October. The ad further stated that they hoped the Barbadian community would come out and pay their respects and tribute to Garvey. Now Garvey arrived in Barbados on the 19th of October 1937. And Garvey's visit was expected from 1928. In fact, in 1928, the Garveyites on the island were making plans to welcome Garvey to Barbadian shores. But the police said, no, we don't want Garvey to set foot on Barbadian shores because we are not sure that when Garvey get here how the hotheads were going to respond. In fact, it was felt that Garvey's presence on the island was going to be detrimental to law and order. As a result, the authorities prevented Garvey from coming to Barbados, which was a major disappointment to the Garveyites on the island, given the fact that there were several Garveyites on the island, several branches of the UNIA, and this space we are in is called the Israel Lovell Foundation space. And we know that Israel Lovell was the first president of the Westbury branch of the UNIA. So the Garveyites in the UNIA as well as in the Working Men's Association were very disappointed. Therefore, when Garvey came in 1937, thousands of Barbadians were on the pierhead hoping to see and hear, and they were actually seeing Garvey that they heard so much about for the last how many years, because it was customary for the UNIA to speak about Garvey, to read portions of Garvey's newspaper, and Garvey's newspaper was sold on the island. So Barbadians were very familiar. In fact, the UNIA went out very much like how some of the Christians go and set up their open air meetings, and they were trying to recruit Garveyites using this method as well. So Garvey's visit was very anticipated. But by this time, the Garveyite movement in Barbados was very weak. There was only one functioning branch, and this was the Westbury branch of the UNIA. The timing of Garvey's visit was also problematic as well, because on the one hand, whilst there was excitement about Garvey's visit, This was in the aftermath of the labor rebellion of 1937 as well. So there was great sadness because many of the Garveyites were in prison, and October, this was the period of the October assizes as well. So persons like Israel Lovell, persons like Alric Grant, two of the leading Garveyites, they were unable to see Garvey. So this was a bittersweet tinge in 1937. The Garvey visit was not controversy-free as well, because this was Garvey very much on the decline. And I say Garvey very much on the decline because Garvey was resident in England, and he was trying to put the UNIA together again. And I said put the UNIA together again. The UNIA was suffering from a lot of internal fracturing, and the organization lacked the financial resources that it had many years ago. In fact, Garvey was not as militant, and we have to recognize that the older one gets as well. So if you're not a revolutionary, unless you're like my comrade Bobby, that is forever a revolutionary, but you must have this revolutionary fervor in your early years. And Garvey made a statement that was controversial because he said that he blamed the communists for the labor rebellions inside of Trinidad, and this showed that Garvey was not sufficiently connected to the development taking place inside the West Indies. And Clennon Wickham, who was a founder member of the Through the Street branch of the UNIA, he took Garvey to task inside of editorial. And previously, Clennon Wickham had written positively about Garvey. And the mere fact that the authorities allowed Garvey to come in Barbados, or to come to Barbados, would demonstrate that they no longer fear the mighty Marcus Garvey. So notwithstanding all of the environment, the prevailing environment that usher in this visit, Dan Blackett and J.P. Ramsey met Garvey on the boat. And you know J.P.C. Ramsey, the J.P.C. Ramsey on the boat. And J.P.C. Ramsey was a founder member of the Through the Street branch of the UNIA, the first UNIA branch inside of Barbados. And then Garvey was walked to shore. He was taken on an island tour, visited Bay Street Boys School and the Arms House. But part of his visit, he went to the Liberty Hall in Westbury Road, and all UNIA branches would have a Liberty Hall, where he was given a guard of honor by 24 members of the landship York, and while he was having the guard of honor, they were singing the UNIA anthem. Later on, there was a luncheon. In fact, he visited Codrington College as well. There was a luncheon in Queen's Park. At this luncheon, there was a toast given to Garvey, and Garvey responded to the toast by saying that this was not the first occasion that he visited Barbados. Right? He visited Barbados in 1914 before he was famous. And he was literally in pains to speak about what happened in 1928. In fact, Garvey was so distraught with not being able to come ashore in Barbados that he petitioned the League of Nations about his treatment then. And later on, but John Beckles, the first president of the Through the Street UNIA branch, he raised the toast. And he said when they heard of the work of Garvey, they formed UNIA, and they went about doing work as well as following the progress of Garvey. And then Garvey gave his lecture late in the night to one of the largest crowds ever assembled in Queen's Park, and the title of his lecture was Intelligence versus Ignorance. Right? And this motivational lecture, he started off by way of saying that he was proud to be a black man. So he was affirming his blackness, and he said that he would not trade being a black man for anything. So, and this was a period, and even today, people still have some discomfort about blackness and about their identity, but Garvey was clear that I am proud to be a black man. In fact, black skin was a badge of glory and not a badge of shame. Part of his counsel, for example, he made about 4 major points where he said, when there's Harold Barrow birthday, sometimes you do hear Barrow's voice in the ad saying that he went to this lecture and some of the things that Garvey said still resonated with him. So one of the things Garvey said, for example, is he said to stop taking the other brothers and sisters to court. He said start going to sleep or going to bed so early and making so many babies. Right? So this is part of Garvey's advice. But he was saying very much in terms of his self-reliant philosophy that they had to get up and build roads, build cities, build ships because nobody was going to do it for them. And then he left the island. So this is Garvey's visit. Because of the prevailing conditions in Barbados for the first half of the 20th century, Garvey's message was very relevant. So Barbados suffered from being probably, and I'm quoting Colonel Wickham now, the most racist of the West Indian territories. So we could even quote the political scientist Gordon Lewis, who speaks about the 3 Bs. Bermuda, Bahamas, and Barbados had a reputation for being very racist. So you look at the outstanding figures of the first half of the 20th century, and you will see that Duncan O'Neill looms like a giant, and Duncan O'Neill was a Garveyite. In fact, he learned Garveyism when he was living in Trinidad at the feet of Howard Bishop at the Trinidad Working Men's Association, and he came back to have Canadian socialism as well as black nationalism. And if you look at the Working Men's Association, he will tell you that the Working Men's Association was inspired by Garvey. And you look at the economic nationalism of the Working Men's Association when they had their store and pharmacy on the outside of the building. It was written in very bold letters to show the Barbadian public that this building was owned by black Barbadians, and he was practicing the cooperative economics of Garvey, saying let us pool our resources so that we can create businesses to give our people jobs. Unfortunately, the Working Men's Association pharmacy and store collapsed. But this Garvey's ideas here. We look at Payne. Right? Clement Payne was a Garveyite as well. And Clement Payne, when in his 17 meetings in Barbados, Clement Payne spoke about racism again. And he also spoke about the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. Payne was also assisted by some Garveyites as well, like Israel Lovell, like Albert Grant as well. So the first half of the 20th century, you can see the impact of Garvey's ideas on the progressive forces. And if you look at the next half of the 20th century, and we go to my comrade Bobby, People's Progressive Movement, a Marxist party. However, and then we know that the Marxists place the emphasis on class and class struggle. But because of the radical tradition within Garveyism and the objective and subjective conditions of Barbados, in their wisdom, the PPM called their organ the Black Star newspaper. And the Black Star newspaper was very much like Garvey's shipping line, the Black Star liner. And the beauty, the creative genius of the PPM was that the paper preached black radicalism, right? Black revolutionary nationalism, black internationalism, and we can say this was a form of Pan-Africanism as well. So they recognize, and the PPM evolved to be the leading, under this man here sitting here, the PPM evolved to be the leading black power group in Barbados in the late 60s up to about 1973, led by Bobby Clark and Calvin Arlene. I think you people should clap for this man because you don't know about the contribution of these people. And all of the other organizations, I'm winding down, all of the other organizations, whether it would be Southern African Liberation Committee, whether it was the Climate Pain Movement, the UNIA, there was a UNIA branch formed by Martin Cadogan, because I can't have a conversation about Garvey and Barbados and I don't mention the name of Martin Cadogan. Martin Cadogan was a convert of Garvey when he was living in Harlem, a member of the African pioneer movement of Charles Cook. And in 1987, celebrating the 100th anniversary or the centenary of Garvey, as a tribute, the Martin Cadogan, Viola Davis, Trevor Marshall, Olu Worrell form a branch of the UNIA. And there was also the 100th anniversary committee led by Lloyd Jones, David Commission, Michael Cummins, our brother Cheeseman, Tony Cheeseman, and Claudette Jakes as well. So the ideas of Garvey also was at the center, and many of these individuals, when they moved from these entities, they also brought the same kind of ideas, black nationalism. And I didn't mention the Black Knight as well, because when you're talking about black power, as I think social critic Howard Crew said, that black power is essentially Garveyism repackaged and given a shot in the arm to meet the requirements of the 1960s. So we know that the Black Power movement was a lot about the affirmation of blackness. So you look at the Climate Pain movement, you look at the Pan-African movement of Barbados, you look at the Global African Congress, and even in this present moment when we discussing black lives, and we look at the economic philosophy behind the blackouts, or we look at the economic philosophy behind supporting black businesses, etc., we are still seeing the hands of Garvey etched inside the philosophy of these progressive movements. And by progressive movements, I apologize for not defining them, but I was essentially speaking about the Marxists or the Pan-Africanists, or we can put the cultural nationalists inside the mix. So I'm saying that Garvey's project was a project for a better world. And the Pan-Africanists and the Progressive project was a project for a better world. And inside Barbados, the project of the Progressive was and still is for the advancement and the betterment of black people all over the world, for concern for what was and is happening on the continent, and ultimately the creation of a better world for humankind. I thank you.